I was reading an example of that recently where basically there was two situations tied to the same case. You had an informant on a case who apparently violated their supervised release in some way or fashion. And they went into court on this specific case. They went into court. Due to violation, obviously, as we all know, if anybody violates supervised release, they're up for possibly 9 out of 10 times going back to jail for a certain amount of time, whatever the punishment is for the violation. And the judge acknowledged that the individual, the informant, was in the wrong and apparently committed things that broke the agreement of the supervised release. And the judge did give a good speech as it related to how the law was broken and how things were done incorrectly and how there was a breach of the supervised release terms. However, when it came time to determining the sentence, the person wasn't put in jail because of apparent underlying conditions and how it relates to the whole COVID situation. So they were spared going to jail. Now you get the same judge where a defendant files for a compassionate release on the exact same case, mind you, same judge, same case. The informant on the case, after the case was over, broke the conditions of the supervised release, didn't get any time, was kept out of jail because of COVID. Now you have one of the defendants on the exact same case putting in to be released a little early, and it wasn't much early. I think they have a year and something left to do, so they would have been released about a year early. They put in a compassionate release for legitimate underlying issues. We're talking cancer was one of the issues, and a bunch of other unfortunate health ailments that are legitimate, that are verified by a doctor. Now, one would think if this judge made these decisions in a fair way, regardless of who was in front of them, they would go by their pattern. And what I mean by that is they didn't put the informant in jail because of COVID and because of these underlying issues, which I don't even think were that serious when you compare them to the defendant I'm talking about. I mean, we're talking about somebody with cancer and somebody with serious issues. So they were spared from going back to jail because of the COVID rationale. Yet the defendant, an Italian charged with RICO, and the informant was also an Italian charged with RICO, but the big difference is they were an informant. So they were spared, and unfortunately, the defendant was denied compassionate release. So to me, if you just look at that logically, anybody in the public, you're looking at that logically, wouldn't the same conditions apply? So if you're using the same rationale not to put somebody away because of COVID, wouldn't you use the same rationale to then let that person out early because of COVID if they do have these underlying conditions and if they do contract COVID? And I think they already got it once, so if they get it again, it could really be detrimental. It could really, God forbid, who knows what could happen. Wouldn't you think that would result in the exact same situation? So the informant wasn't sent away. On the flip side of the coin, that would mean, in my eyes anyway, and I would think in any reasonable thinking person's mind, that the person would be let out under the same type of decision making that was used to not put the informant away in the first place. And to me, that blatantly just shows how it's not fair for all. You're not treated the same way based on the law, based on the charges. You're talking about two people. They were both charged with RICO. They were both charged in the indictment. And yet one was spared going away who broke supervised release based on underlying conditions. One was kept in jail, not let on compassionate release based on underlying conditions, more serious underlying conditions. And the only factor that was different when you look at defendant versus informant is one is a defendant and one is an informant. So obviously the informant was given the benefit of the doubt. Now it is what it is. If that's how you want to rule, I guess that's just the way you rule. But my My issue is it should be the same way across the board. If your thinking is because of COVID and because of underlying conditions, somebody who broke supervised release should not be put in the prison system, then that same train of thought should carry over for the defendant. The defendant's sick. The defendant has serious underlying conditions. Because of COVID, they should be released, especially when there's only a year left on the time. And the informant could face, I think, up to a few years. So we're talking about the same type of logic here as it relates. You have same amount of time, same situation, same variables. The only thing that's different is one is an informant, and of course they get the superior treatment. They get the favorable terms. And anybody would see why, because they're an informant. And I just don't know how one could claim to be fair and giving decisions that are fair when that happens, when that plays out. It's clear as day to anybody, again, with little common sense who's just looking at the facts, that it's not playing out fairly, that it